Hello, welcome to the bus tutorial. This is all about buses, so I hope you like buses, and if you don't, maybe you will at the end of this, maybe you'll hate them at the end of this. But in this portion of our mass transit kind of bonanza tutorial slash playlist, we're going to go ahead and dive into buses. We'll go through the assets, as well as kind of the different routes, how to create routes, what to look out for. We'll actually create a couple routes as well, and maybe some thoughts on general use of bus, as well as how do you know when you broke your bus route. So without further ado, let's get started. So bus routes and buses and the assets, they're pretty simple, pretty basic. I mean, you really only have a few choices. You have, if you just have the regular vanilla base game, you have this bus depot, which produces like the base game bus, which is fine. It's a little noisier than the biofuel, which is the one I tend to use. Biofuel bus is a little bit more costly, but that's okay. Trade-off is you get a little bit quieter bus, which is nice for your citizens. Then you go, so let's talk about this depots. You really only need to put one down, and I would recommend the bus being probably the first transit you start with in your city. It's probably the first one you unlock, I think, as if you're progressing with the milestones. Now, of course, if you're building your city with unlimited money and milestones unlocked, and you're kind of just planning the whole thing out, of course, you'll have all the transit available to you and build it as you see fit, of course. But if you're kind of progressing through the milestones, you'll unlock these guys first, and you'll end up by putting this down. I always recommend putting it down like your industry area. So my bus depot is actually right here. This is the original first tile, and he's down here in the industry because it's a noisy building. It doesn't generate that much traffic. It actually generates zero traffic probably 90% of the time. It only generates traffic when you add more bus lines or increase the number of buses on a route, or I guess technically decrease the number of buses and they gotta go back. But for the most part, you usually set up your bus routes, let them run for a little while, and kind of once you dial them in, you don't really need more buses. It just kind of sits there and doesn't do anything. You can also move it. So like as your city progresses and you find it like, well, this is kind of far away from like all of this area down here, maybe what I'll do is I'll move it like in the middle, because if I were to create a bus line now, I'll go ahead and let this guy fill it back up. When I go ahead and create a bus line now, say down in this area, it's just going to take a while for the buses to kind of come from the depot all the way down here. Or if I want to adjust, if I have a bus line down here already and I want to adjust the number, it's just going to take a while for that bus to get here. So you can move it later on somewhere like a little more central to your city. Also, if you're doing a 9-tile build, which is of course console and PC vanilla, then you only really need one bus depot in your whole entire city. I think it kind of produces, we'll say 700, I think is the number I read online. You can fact check me on that. But it will just say it's a large number of buses that you'll probably never use that many in a city of, we'll say 100, 250k size on 9 tiles. You build a million city on 81 tiles like on PC, I could see it, you might need more than just one depot. But for most of us, for the majority of us, we're going to just need one depot. Just find a nice place to put it, because it's a little noisy, and place it there. If you want to keep it in the original place like I did, you can. If you want to kind of think about it later on and go, oh yeah, I should move it like more central so way buses can kind of get where they need to go throughout the whole entire city, then you can do that too. So that's totally up to you. Next thing is the bus station. So this guy works like a hub and spoke method. You can kind of throw him, maybe say like in this high density kind of commercial area, and then you could run out, little feeder routes. That could maybe, if he was where this train station is now, you could run like a route out to here, a route out to here, a route into here, maybe one or two into this high density commercial area, maybe a couple into here, and so on and so forth. So you just kind of let those buses kind of go out and come back. And it works fairly well. I would recommend if you do that, make the routes maybe a little bit smaller, because what's going to happen is you might find that it becomes very, very busy, because now you've kind of like centralized a location where all the people can do a transfer, and it might become very popular. And of course, the downside of bus is the capacity, right? It's probably, I'm thinking, the lowest capacity vehicle in the game, 30. I don't know what a helicopter is. Helicopter could be smaller. I'm not sure. I haven't really used a helicopter. Blimps are 35s, so they're a little bit bigger. So when you create a really awesome route and people want to use it, it's hard to sometimes manage it with buses because you end up having to put a billion buses on the line, which can cost up your traffic. So let's see, the next thing, you may or may not have some of these intercity buses. These come from the Sunset Harbor DLC. And then you have roads in here that you can use to kind of give your buses dedicated lanes if you're kind of going for like a bus themed city. That'll help separate your traffic. Let's see, what else is in here? There's a couple hubs in here that are really, really nice. This hub up here really impressed me. This is the first time I use it in this city. And I have it somewhere in here hiding. This guy here. The description's a little misleading. It says monorail station with a built-in bus stop. And at first I was like, that seems kind of stupid, because why would you want to put down a monorail and just have like a bus stop? But I said, well, let me just see what it looks like. And I put it down and I got this. And I was like, oh, nice. Because this has a bunch of different like bus bays, we'll call them, or like bus platforms. So you can really put in, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 routes. I see, maybe 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, no, 5. So 10 routes. So I would encourage you to use this over we'll say, if you have it available, over this guy here. He's got, let's see what he's got. We'll do this on camera so you guys can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I thought it was 12. So he's got 2 more bus platforms, but it's linked up with a monorail. So now you have a nice monorail that these guys can kind of scoop up like all the people and then put them on the monorail. The monorail can shoot them down to like the next big area, which is really nice. And the cost is phenomenal. I was like blown away by this. So we'll go over this real quick. Then we'll get into laying out some routes and stuff and types of routes and maybe some good examples of when you use it. So this thing's $1,200. Comes with After Dark. But if you have the Mass Transit DLC, which I recommend is probably one of the better ones to get in the beginning, if you only have so many DLCs, Mass Transit has a lot of flexibility and has a lot of good stuff in it. So this one's $1,200 on the bus terminal, right? The bus station. And then the monorail with road is $320. So $320 plus $1,200 is $1,520, right? So we'll say $1,500 to kind of do the same thing, we'll say. Or for the low cost of $512, I'll say that again, for $500, you can get the same, almost pretty much the same thing. So you're going to save yourself about $1,000 a week. And once again, it's all like nice and compact. It looks pretty good. It looks a lot better than saying maybe plopping this down and then plopping the bus station down right next to it. Okay, but maybe you don't have this because you don't have mass transit, and then of course you just got to work with the system you're in, right? You got to deal with what you got. But I just want to point this out because once again, it's a really good money saver as well. It looks pretty good, and it gives you the same, if not more, real flexibility than say these two combined. This guy here and then this guy here, right? Because once again, too, consider this. Fun fact is now the routes are split up, right? Let's go back into the transit. You got half of them on one side, half of them on the other. So if you're slick and you think out your routes pretty well, you can have it like kind of like how I have it, where they come out of this side and they go like on this side of the road, and they come out and they go on this side of the road. That way they don't like crisscross, and now you're kind of like splitting up the traffic, so to speak. Whereas if you had the bus station, they're all on say the one side of the street, and all the buses are going to have to use that one side of the street to get in and out of the bus station, and it's going to clog up your roads, right? I can put it down, right? They're going to all have to kind of come in, say here, and then come out onto here. Whereas here, you split it up. You got buses going this way and buses going this way. So it actually helps funnel the traffic a little bit better. So let's talk, why would you use bus in the first place? Over, say, other transit. Or what's kind of like the big advantages of bus? One is, you don't have to like mess up the roads, right? You just put down the depot and let it rip, and you can just go. You don't have to, go in with the trolley, and tear up the roads and make trolley roams with the tram, put down and do some tram stuff. Metro, I guess you can get away with putting it underground, but of course you got to build the tunnels, which adds to your maintenance costs. Same with train, all that stuff. You got to like mess up the roads. Ferry, I guess you get away with you're just running around on the water. And same with the air transit, you're just running around in the air. But for the most part, it's very convenient because you can just move the stops anywhere. And that's another kind of flexibility with them is not only do you not have to say mess up the roads or do anything special with a special track or anything like that. You can move the stops at free will. If you don't like where it is, you can move it a little bit. And this leads into the next advantage. It's really convenient to test routes. So if you're not maybe sure how people are going to move within the city, you can just run a bus route and say, let me just try it and see what they do. And then you run the bus route, and if you find, hey, it's pretty popular, so maybe it's like this one, and there's 538 people at the stop, which is a lot of people. You're like, wow, that's good. This is a great route. But maybe this isn't the route a bus should use because I have 530 people on this stop waiting, and the numbers are climbing pretty quickly. Maybe I should use a bigger transit. And then I say, okay, well, why don't I go ahead and maybe put Metro in instead or put tram in instead to alleviate some of these passengers because I have a couple stops here where they're getting kind of big, right? There's a lot of people in here. So it's a good route, but maybe it's not the route for bus. And we're going to kind of show a couple of examples of that here in a second. So that's another advantage, though, is you can test your routes and say, hey, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And then you don't have to spend 2 hours putting in a train line and finding out that only 50 people want to ride on the train, right? You can go ahead and put the bus in and go, yeah, that's a pretty good route. I have 500 people at the stop. Maybe it's time for me to put in, like I said, Metro or tram and see how that goes. And maybe if that's too not big enough, maybe I go ahead and make it a monorail route or something like that. So it's great for testing. It's also cheap. And really actually easy, like I said, it's easy to change, and it's fairly cheap. You can actually make a profit on buses if you for your fares, because really the cost is the depot, and kind of once you put the depot down, I mean you get more and more costs, I believe, as you add more and more buses, and then of course if you increase the number of buses through here, you're kind of effectively raising the budget, your budget expense, but it's not that bad. It's not, like I said, there's no track or anything that will add to your cost. There's no stations other than the depot. I mean, of course, if you want to put down the bus station or some of the hubs, that's good. But really, it just has to stop. So there's no other things you got to really put in. So it's like I said, it's economical if you're trying to save some money. Some of the disadvantages, though, I kind of mentioned already. They're low capacity. So they're not good for certain scenarios. They're not really good for, we'll say, moving folks from your high density commercial area to your high density, residential area back and forth, because they'll just get crushed because there's just too many people want to take them, and you can't fit that many people on a bus. They also interact with the road itself. So if you have a lot of buses and this with a lot of lines with a lot of buses, you could end up actually generating more traffic. So like this route here is kind of a good example I put in earlier, where it's got 85 buses on here. And, it's probably adding a lot of traffic because you can see there's buses like everywhere, right? And that's not necessarily a good thing here to do. We're going to get into that in a second. So let's go ahead and talk route types. Let's go back into buses, we can go into this one here. Actually, this menu is probably better because you get the cursor. So there's two kind of routes that you can run. Well, I would suggest that you run. You can probably run different types of routes more, but this is the kind of routes that I tend to use. One is a collapsing route. So it's a one route where you go down and you find a turnaround spot and the route collapses on itself. So this is all, we'll call this the Peach Line. It's all one bus route, right? And it's got 85 buses on it. And you can see there's like stops on both sides. So people who, maybe who live in here, but they want to go this way, they don't have to get on this bus on the right and like drive around the loop, right? So you always want to when you're doing your routes, you want to take the advantage of, okay, if I live, we'll go into the middle. So it makes a little bit more sense. If I live here, right, and I go to this stop, if I live in this building, can I go this way? And can I go this way? And then you look at your route and go, yeah, because I have a stop on this side of the road, and then people could go and take the bus and go into here, and maybe come down into here and connect with the tram. Or, they can cross the street at the intersection, or maybe you put in some kind of roading structure to create a crosswalk, and we can do that here shortly, just so you can see that. And they can get on this bus and go this way. So just take that perspective. If I get off the monorail and I want to go, this way, I can go this way. I get on this bus, right? If I want to go up into this way, this part of town, then I cross the street and I get on this bus and go up here. And like I said, this is one route where it collapses upon itself. So you create your route, and then you have a turnaround spot. This is the other turnaround spot where it loops back, and you only have the one stop, because then you can say from here I go to this stop, and then from this stop I can transfer and I can go back to where I came from if I want to. This is kind of silly. Or I can kind of continue down the line. Okay, so that's the collapsing route. Then the other route is the loop route. So that's here where you create like a clockwise and counterclockwise route. And that's like the purple line and this green line, right? So this line goes around this way. This line goes around this way. And they just basically form like a loop. They go up, they come down, they come around. You could have done this as a collapsing route by making this like a turnaround, say here, and then having it go maybe down the middle of the street, or even going up here, and then having like a turnaround maybe on this block, and then it folds back on itself. So you can do one or the other. Sometimes it's more convenient and easier to set up a loop route like this, especially if like it goes in like multiple like directions. And the collapsing routes are nice when you have more of like a kind of like a straight kind of run. But if you have like things like zigzagging in and out all over the place, sometimes it's just easier to set up the loop, the counterclockwise route. Okay, how to manipulate these? So I dare say maybe you've never even actually run a bus route before, so maybe we'll just run one real quick just so you can kind of see. And then we'll go ahead and manipulate some of the stuff. So say you wanted to run a bus route in here. If you're on right-hand traffic, just be mindful you're going to go this way. Put the stop in. So just click the button and follow the road, and you'll see it starts rolling. For buses, I'd say stop-wise, like this distance is probably good. You can make them a little bit farther apart, a little bit. I wouldn't go too short, like here to here. But we'll say if these are blocks, maybe every other block would be good. So then you can do something like up here, up here. You know what I'm saying? Maybe it comes back into here. And it goes into here. And then we skip a block and it goes into here. Maybe it comes back around. Maybe it hits this side of the block. It's in the middle here. It comes back. So, the distance between the stops, like I said, roughly 2 blocks is probably good. You can make it a little farther apart if you want. I would suggest not maybe necessarily going a little closer. Because you want them to drive a little bit. People can walk, You can do stuff like this. So we'll get into the route stuff. So let's find one where it's like in the middle. Oh, we have the tram line in the way. So maybe it's something like this. Maybe you want them to cross the street over here so you can take a road piece. And if you don't like this look where you got like this a random piece of like road with trees on here to create that crosswalk, you can kind of keep it like that and then actually use it here. And then if we had the other route on the other side, this won't show because it'll create the indent for the bus to kind of come in here. So then it creates a crosswalk while also maintaining, we'll say, the bland generic road. And we can actually just do that real quick so you can see it. No, I'm not lying to you. Yeah, so that kind of keep it the same if you want. That way it creates the crosswalk. Here, since the bus is like on an intersection, it's not necessarily that it's not needed. But you might end up putting, a bus stop, say in here, and this road's not here. So you need to create like a crosswalk for people to get across. So make sure when you do your transit in general, and tram anything, a tram is a little tricky. You got to create like little side roads like this to pull in a crosswalk. But like especially for the buses, make sure you have a way for people to get from one side of the bus to the other in case they want to go to that stop, but then get onto the other bus, or people want to cross the street and use the other side. Right? They live here, and maybe you got a long bus, a long block like this, and the bus is in the middle like this, but they want to get on this side. You don't want them to like have to walk all the way down the street, come across, and get to this bus stop. Right? They can just come out the house and cross the street. So then you would put a road on this side, a road on this side, or so you could do 2 and 2, or just change to 1. Hopefully that makes sense. How to manipulate lines, we'll go through that real quick. To delete a line, you can just hover over and get that little circle like that, hit square to delete. If you want to drag a stop, you go over the stop. So we'll do this one. You see how I get the big circle around it? And you press and hold X on the PlayStation. Probably click it with the mouse and hold it, and who knows what, maybe it's A, B, or X and Y, whatever button that is on Xbox. And you can just grab it and hold it and just kind of move it around and place it. And then you just let go, and then it'll be done. To delete one particular stop, you want to once again get that big circle over the stop and just hit square. And it goes away. And then to put a new stop in, an existing line, just go to where about you want it and hit X, and then it'll replace the line. So that's how you kind of manipulate. Lines are really easy to move around. Okay, what's the next thing? The next thing we want to talk about here. Good application for buses. So we'll kind of go through that. I have a mass transit tutorial that kind of does a general overview of kind of where to use them, where to use different transit. But in general, buses are good as a standalone, we'll say. So just by itself, and light density stuff. So if you have like a neighborhood like this, a bus route in here, it's fine. It'll handle it pretty well. And then in light commercial, it can do as a standalone here. And then you can even do well as a standalone, moving folks from say light density residential to light density commercial. It kind of goes over main concept number 1, which is the biggest movement of folks is going to be from residential to commercial. High density residential, particularly to high density commercial. So using bus to do that is going to be a challenge. So like in this example here, where I have like say mixed density, where there's some high density mixed in some light, low density, and same like mixed density here where there's like some pretty good concentration of high density and some low density in here. The bus would probably struggle to bring folks from here, say down into this high density commercial area as a standalone. It's just, you're gonna need a lot of buses because a lot of people are gonna want to use it. Where like here, the monorail's kind of doing the job, but it might do well as it is now as a collector, a support transit, we'll say, where you put like bus route in here, like I have. That he collects that bus is doing the job of collecting folks and bringing it to the monorail, right? And then you're getting off on the monorail, and then you use the monorail to go down here. So I would say from high density to high density, you may be okay with using bus as the collector guy, and then using something bigger to move them between the zoning types. Buses work amazing in industrial areas because not that many people go to industrial areas, and I would run buses to your heart's content in there to level up the buildings because they'll provide a service to your industry as well as office. No one goes to office, at least on console. So if you have like an office area, just run bus everywhere. Then just put one bus on the line, dial it down all the way to like kind of like these routes here. No one's using these. Like 25 people, right? But and you're like, why are you putting these in here, noob? You're a noob for doing that. No, because what I'm trying to do is just level up this industry buildings. And lo and behold, they're level 5. Or level 3. Lo and behold, they're level 3. Because it works, right? And then you just have 1 or 2 buses on the line, whatever you need. You realize you're not going to have a whole lot of volume here. This guy and whatever the other one is, right? And I have once again buses down in here for like the industry that I'll put down in here. So they're great for leveling up office buildings as well as your industry buildings. What else are they good for? Like I said, good for light to light, and I would say in a mixed and in a high density, they're good as support transit. But I wouldn't make them the main transit between the two. You can try it with some of the hubs. you're just going to have to run a lot of bus routes to kind of get to work, I think. So like if you were to use the bus station, like say in this area here, maybe you run like, you know, and you have the 12 routes, maybe you run 2 or 3 routes in here and like scoop up like these people as a one bus route, kind of scoop up like these people and have a route that kind of comes into here and scoops up these people and brings them all down into here. And the same thing, maybe you have one here that's like breaks up this area into like 2 or 3 sections, and the bus like kind of is like an express route where maybe it has like, you know, 1, 2, 3 stops or something like that, or maybe just even 1 stop, and you have like paths and stuff going to it, and he just goes boom, and this is like a little express run bringing it down. I can see that working pretty well. It's like I said, if you have like one bus station like in a huge commercial area, like say down in here, this is all like high density commercial, and you're running buses all throughout the city like this, it's going to be a lot of buses. It's going to end up clogging up your roads and probably causing traffic problems. Where, you know, train or metro or something's going to be the better choice there. So this kind of gets into, one thing I forgot to touch on with routing when we were talking about creating routes. So there's 2 concepts that you just need to understand when you make a route. One is, and if we would go ahead and make one. One is, the Sims know the route's there. If you put a route down while the game's paused, or while the game's running, I should say, they'll start showing up immediately. So like, let's just delete this route. Make them unhappy. They all disperse, right? But let's go ahead and put a route down. We'll make it pretty easy. We'll put it here. And we'll put it here. Just so you can kind of see it in action. And then I'm also on Twitch, so I got Twitch. Someone's saying something to me, so I'm gonna go ahead and get back to it in a second. But we won't even complete the line yet, and you'll see here. People are already starting to wait to stops. See, they're already waiting. They're getting ready to come and wait at the stops. So one thing is when you make a route, when you first put down a stop, and the game's running, the Sims go, "Ooh, bus stop! I want to use that," and they start showing up. And then you make the route. And then 2, what's going to happen is it takes time for the buses to get to their actual route. So when you look at the route, let's look at this route real quick. Is it this one? I can't tell. Like colorblind today. There you go. You look at the route, you're going to start seeing like the stops pile up. Because people are like, "Ooh, it's a cool bus route, let me take it." And at the same time, it's going to take time for your buses to get here. And then when they first show up, they're all going to hang out at the first stop. They're going to go, "Okay, the game's going to want to space out the buses." Because the game doesn't want like 3 buses in a row, like driving down the street. Because that doesn't do you any good. Like no buses at, say, you got all your buses here, and they're all just driving down the street, and there's like no buses at this stop. Or no buses at this stop. The game's going to go, "Nah, I'm going to put like 5 buses on this route," or whatever it is, 6, and I'll have 1 at each stop. It's going to want to space it out so that there's a bus at each stop, we'll say. So be mindful when you first create a route and you look, don't panic, and you see, "Oh shoot, there's like 60 people, 400 people here, 500 people here. Oh man, what did I do?" No, it's just because the Sims know that the stop's there immediately as soon as you put it down when the game's running. So they're going to go there. And then 2, it takes time for the buses to travel from the depot to here, so they're going to kind of accumulate. And then 3, all the buses are going to be at the first stop, and then it's going to take time for the game to kind of like sort itself out and spread them out. So while it's doing that, people are piling up and up and up. You just want to, if you look at this and you put it down, you can see how like the 102 it's a little high, but see how it's going up, not like real fast. It's like a couple here and there. The bus is probably going to be fine. If I were to do it and say, there's another route over here where I actually did do it. I have like 500 people at the stop just for you guys. So this route here. Where'd it go? Let's click on the bus. I see the bus. I see you, Mr. Bus. Yeah, we got 493 people at the stop. But you see how fast the numbers are going? That's not good for bus. So if you're on bus, if you're doing bus, and you click on the stop, even when you first start the route and you see it, the numbers flickering like that, then you ought to consider, okay, I made a really good route, and this route's going to be awesome, but bus might be not the way to go, because it's climbing pretty quick for bus. That's right, Bob. Buses, buses, buses. Bob says hi, by the way. Yeah, so that's one thing to kind of be mindful of. Just look at the rate of change. And it takes time, practice and time and learning and kind of get a feel for things like that. But I can tell you right now that this stop here is going to be a problem stop for a bus. He's going to struggle because of how fast it's climbing. All right, that's all I wanted to kind of touch out on buses, because I know it can be, like I said, a little confusing and, like I say, overwhelming when you first put it down, because the buses got to sort themselves out. So you kind of use the rate of change to kind of say, okay, did I do a good job? And is bus the right choice? If I see it like that, maybe I consider doing a bigger transit, or if it's going up like the other one where it's just a few ticks at a time, maybe it'll sort itself out. Let it run. Go get yourself a sandwich, Coca-Cola, whatever, come back 10, 15 minutes later, go build some stuff, and then check it and see if it sorted itself out. If it didn't, then go ahead and upgrade it. Because if you didn't do a bad job, you made actually a really awesome route that people want to take. So, pat yourself on the back for that. It's just you might be using the wrong transit, we'll say, or undersized transit. And that's kind of where we'll get into next here, is when to know that you broke your transit and when to know you need to upgrade your transit. And I think I have an example over here. Let's see here. I tried to, but this is a big route, so it might have sorted. Here, this is a pretty good example. I'm actually at, I'll say, the capacity of the line. So there's a concept you got to understand with really any transit, is that transit has a vehicle capacity limit. And we're about at it, or kind of like, I'd say, see, we're right on the cusp with this route. You see how this vehicle here is pulling away and this vehicle's kind of coming in? That's okay. We're pretty much at the vehicle limit of this line. It's kind of still working smooth, but he's not waiting. So he's not queued up. See how this bus is showing up and this bus is leaving? We're pretty much, like, if I put more buses on this line, then what's going to happen is as this bus leaves, this bus will wait on this bus. And then what you could happen is you'll have 2, 3 buses piled up here at this stop, waiting to use this stop. And if they're queuing and that's what they're doing, then pardon my French here, but you're doing it wrong. You're messing up your bus line. You're messing up your transit. You don't want your vehicles queuing. Stop, because it doesn't do you any good. At that point, you've exceeded the capacity of the line. You have too many vehicles. See, like, I'm kind of there on this now. You see how this one's kind of showing up, this one's kind of leaving. So like I said, I'm right at the max number. If you went to a stop, so look at your transit, and if you go to a stop and you see like 2, 3, 5 buses in a row waiting to use that stop, and of course the caveat being you have enough buses, or you're attempting, I'll say, to put enough buses on the line to alleviate, say, a busy stop. You don't have like empty buses just going around. Then you need to upgrade your transit to the next transit, really, because people sitting in a bus waiting isn't helping. It's actually just causing traffic problems, because your buses are sticking out in the intersection, clogging up your streets, and people on buses aren't doing anything. They need to be getting on and off the bus. And like this one here, it's kind of running smooth, but like I said, it's getting to the point of, we'll say, no return here, where these guys are going to start actually clogging up the roads more. And what you can do is just check your line 1. Maybe you put too many buses on the line. So then just look in your tool here, and look at your buses, and look. I don't know, this is a peach one. This one has 85 buses on the line, which is a lot. Which I'm not going to go through and check all these. I put it on the line to try and break it on purpose for the video. But I can see, I have a 29. So I have people waiting at the stop, 30 people. So it's probably the appropriate number of buses on the line, we'll say. Because you want to have enough vehicles on the line that people don't have to wait for the next vehicle. At least that's how I kind of run my transit. You don't want to have like a stop where 500 people are waiting. and the buses are just kind of running. You want to have a stop where, 25, 30 people, maybe 40 people are waiting. That way, when the next vehicle comes along, they can take it and go where they want to go. You wouldn't want to wait at a bus stop, right, or at a train station, and be waiting, and then the train show up, and then you can't get on that train, right? You'd be pretty pissed off, I imagine. You'd probably just go, no, I'm not taking the train. Get in the car and drive somewhere. Right? And that's what the Sims can do. If they wait too long, they will wait a while, but they can wait. They'll wait too long, and then they'll just hop in the car and drive. So you want to be just like you, right? You show up at the bus stop, and you wait for the bus, and when the bus comes, you get on the bus and go. You don't want to have to wait for like the 4th bus and wait in line. So don't make your Sims do that. So adjust your routes so that there's a bus. We'll say a few buses that say are getting close to the max capacity, or that they're running at max capacity, but they're scooping up, say, most of the people. Maybe a few people, a few poor souls are left behind. But you don't want to, like I said, have 0 people at stops, at all your stops. Of course, there's some here because some stops are busier than others, right? But you also don't want to have hundreds of people waiting at the stop. So when you're looking at your routes in the number of vehicles, you want to make sure your route's kind of set up to handle, of course, the capacity or the ridership that you have. And then once you've kind of done that, and then you find you're in a sticky situation where your buses are queuing, then you really can't do anything else. You can't add more buses, because adding more buses won't do anything, because then they'll just block traffic. You can't downgrade the number of buses, because downgrading the number of buses will just make people wait at the stops. So at that point, you got to upgrade to the next transit. You say, okay, it's time to upgrade to the next transit. And then you can pick whatever transit you have at your fancy. You can do tram. If you got it, you can do metro, train, whatever it may be. I think that's about it. So that's how you know when to upgrade. When the buses start queuing, or you may just say 85 buses is just too much traffic to handle, and I'm just going to reduce that. That's how I would. I wouldn't even look at the queuing thing. I would say I need 85 buses to keep up on this bus route. No way. I'm not doing that. I'm putting in something else. Oh, I guess the last thing, short circuit transit. So before I let you go, I know this got a little bit long. Your buses can also short circuit your other transit, which is what I'd set up this route to do. So just be mindful of this as well. So I have Metro here, and I was actually moving, say, about 400 people per loop. And I went ahead and put in the bus route. You can see the bus route next to it. And if you look at the Metro line now, I'm moving 95 people. And there's like 0, 17, and 5 people on this Metro, and 3, 42, and 0 on this one. So be careful when you run your routes to not short circuit your other transit. And we'll kind of look at that again. See, this bus route, I did this on purpose, and I basically followed, and it kind of proves the point that me and Bob were talking about a few streams ago, that yes, it looks like they have a preference for bus, because this is basically the same exact route that follows the Metro. I would say it might be slightly shorter. I don't know, because it's a little longer here, but a little shorter here. But almost everybody's using the bus. If you look at this route, there's 480 people waiting at this bus stop, right? And they could just take the Metro. It'll take them where they need to go, but they don't want to do that. They want to take the bus. So when you're running your bus routes, look at your other transit, and you want to make it more like as a complementary, as opposed to running in the same path. Or if you find you have a lot of transit and maybe you need to offload some of the transit, you can kind of try and build a semi-similar route to try and pull people off. So you can kind of manipulate your buses and your other transit in general to either offload some transit that's too busy or complement it. So maybe instead of having the buses kind of do this, maybe they run more this way. They kind of run this way. I'm making myself dizzy. As opposed to running this way with the Metro. So then they could collect, like if this neighborhood was bigger, maybe they scoop people up in the back here and they brought them down into here, and then they can, maybe it came down into here, then they could hop onto the stop here and do stuff. Maybe it came down to here and went back up into here. I don't know. This area is tough, I think, for bus and Metro to be the same spot. But I think that's it when it comes to buses. I hope it was helpful. I know it's a little long, but it's hopefully detailed enough to kind of give you an idea how to set up the buses, how to adjust the lines, what to look for when you're doing it, and maybe some tips on when to know that your bus line is kind of broken and you need to upgrade it or do something different. See me on Twitch at New Build Cities. Smash my name all together. So I encourage you to join and say hi. I know some people are saying hi, so I gotta get back to the chat. And I hope you run a magnificent and wonderful transit system. And it includes bus, because buses are very useful. And thank you, and have a great day. And as always, happy building.